behind the scenes with future country rock blues kings and queens. Discover 'em first with Palm Mash TV. Palm Mash TV.
Well, hello there, it's Palm Mash TV time again. Thank you so much for joining us. Another great interview is coming up in just a moment. But before we begin, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell to get notified of any new episodes coming your way. And leave a comment on the comments section. We'd love to hear from you there. And if you pay attention to the description part, as well as the closing credits at the end of the show, we're going to have contact info for you. So stay tuned for that. From Essen, Germany today, we have Tony Ross and with his project, The Kind Machine. And I think you're really going to love the song at the end, and you're really going to enjoy this guy. And we're going to get to that in a second, but as always, here's a quick word from the Caden Gordon Show, so don't go away. We'll be right back right after this.
It is Caden from the Caden Gordon Show, today's best country mix. Check out my show at thecadengordonshow.com.
Okay, we're back, and with us from Essen, Germany, we have Tony Ross and his project, The Kind Machine. Thank you so much for joining us, Tony.
No, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be asked.
No problem. We're glad to have you here. How did it begin for you, though? I mean, have you always wanted to be an artist since you were a kid? Maybe you grew up in a music family, or I mean, there's so many different reasons on why people want to be an artist. So tell us your story, though.
Yeah, I've always been interested in music. My parents used to have this huge, massive piece of furniture. It looked like a piece of furniture, but it had a built-in record player and a radio. And I remember I used to sit in front of this particular piece of furniture. It was so big, you could actually put a television on top. So it was like our own home entertainment center. So I used to just take whatever records were actually inside this particular unit, and they were songs by Neil Sedaka and Jim Reeves and the Beatles, a couple of the Beatles, and I just started to play records. And I think my love of music started there. As a teenager growing up, I would listen to music shows. I would listen to albums and singles that I liked, that I'd actually heard on the TV show. So we had a very famous TV show called Top of the Pops, which ran in the UK, and they would sort of run down the charts. And then when I heard something that I liked on TV, I'd save up my pocket money, and then next day I go down to the local record shop, and then I would just buy 3 records, and they would typically be those songs that I heard. So that's how my love of music started. And then when I got into my early teens, I decided I wanted to, just play music and play guitar because it was cool. Primarily, the punk scene in the UK in the early 70s was really, really inspirational for me. I really liked bands like the Sex Pistols and the Clash. And up until that point, I thought that you had to be some kind of god to be able to play music. You know, I listened to albums from Yes and Genesis, and I thought you had to be a really accomplished musician. And I thought it was well beyond the reach. So for me, punk rock broke the glass ceiling. You know, I mean, basically, John Linden, basically said, you know, it's just about making art. If you know 3 chords, you can write a song. So then I went out and got a guitar. Played it very badly, joined college bands with my friends. We formed college bands, and that's how my love of music started. And ever since then, I think in my early years, we tried to get that elusive record contract. We almost got signed for a distribution deal with an independent company, but we didn't quite make it. So after that, of course, you just settle down into normal life. I continued to play guitar, and I played in pub bands and played cover songs. And I did that actually for about 20 or 30 years on and off. But recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, some old school friends, actually, they were people who played with me in bands when I was at college. They actually made contact with me again and said, hey, you know, why don't we just continue making music? So to cut a long story short, we decided we were going to release that album. We never did. The band was called That's Formato Effect. And and we just recorded it. I did all the production and the mixing and the engineering from my home studio behind me. And it took us 2 years, but eventually we wrote a 7-track album and we released it. So that was my journey back, if you like, into music as an artist. And since then, I decided that I have problems with remote working. Most people know that if you're working remotely, it's a little bit difficult. The two band members from That Sfumato Effect were based in the UK, so it always took a long time to get things done. I kind of decided that I wanted to try and do my own project. And I think about like 4 or 5 months ago, the idea sort of started to run around in my head that I could maybe sing because I'm not a natural singer. And then I decided to start the project. And therefore, that's how the Kai Machine actually came into existence.
Hmm. Well, that's quite a story. A lot of great, influences, I guess, that came out. Because I know you mentioned the Beatles, Neil Sedaka, and Johnny Rotten, and all those. Did you have any others that came to mind?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was very much before punk rock happened, very interested in prog music. So I used to listen to a lot of Genesis, early Genesis with Peter Gabriel. I must say is my favorite lineup of that particular band. So I remember listening to songs like Foxtrot and Supper's Ready and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and Selling England by the Pound, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. So I was very influenced by that music, the theatrical music. I love piano-based music, and I like classical music too. So that kind of music really, really influenced me very early on. And as I said, punk it came on the scene and it really exploded. So one of the early punk bands that I got into were the Stranglers. They actually turned out to be a new wave band. So there are a lot of bands in the UK at the time that was sort of pub rock, that they kind of jumped on the new wave punk rock bandwagon. They could play, they were musicians. And for example, The Stranglers is a very good example because their lyrics were very shocking, and deliberately so because they wanted to sort of like take advantage of this new type of music. I really liked the early Stranglers albums and some of their later albums. And then I got into electronic music. I always was a fan of Kraftwerk. I remember as a 14-year-old buying the album Autobahn, and I took it to my bedroom and I played it, and I just thought, wow, I mean, this music is just like nothing like I've ever heard before. And I did actually then have a tendency, the seeds were sown for my love of electronic music. So I remember the album Autobahn. But later on, of course, one band that sort of grew out of the punk movement was a band called Tubeway Army with Gary Newman, and their first album was very guitar based. And then, of course, the album Replicas came out with hit songs like Our Friends Electric. And the moment I heard that, I knew I wanted to play synthesizers because I'd learned how to play guitar, but obviously a synthesizer was something exotic. I mean, the sounds that you can get lots of sounds out of a guitar, but obviously the first time I heard a synth and I played one, I just thought, the sounds that you can get out of this thing are endless. And I was inspired then by bands, experimental electronic bands. I mean, for example, I think they're called Cabaret Voltaire, a very sort of experimental electronic band, big influence on me. And also early bands, Heaven 17, which actually they were Human League. So the first two Human League albums were quite experimental before they actually split their ways and went pop. Two members from Human League who left the band went on to form Heaven 17. So then I really, that's when I started to think about synthesizers, and I played in a few bands playing keyboards and synthesizers. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, of course, is another band that were a massive influence. In fact, a friend of mine tried to form a copy band. I played synths and he played bass. We weren't very good, so we didn't last very long. The songs we wrote weren't that brilliant, but that's the kind of music that inspired me. When I went back to playing guitar in cover bands, of course, I was as a guitarist, but one of the things that I love about doing the Kai Machine now is I've rediscovered my love of synthesizers and that kind of music. So that's the genre that I'm exploring at the moment. Yeah. But those are probably the bands I did fall in love with guitar music again. I remember listening to Bryan Adams. I bought the Reckless album when it came out, and that rekindled my love for electric guitar. I'm a big fan of the Canadian band Rush, and I'm so happy to hear that they're actually touring again. Rather tragic what happened to their drummer, Neil Peart, as we all know, unfortunately passed on. But right from the early days in the 70s, when the first Rush album I bought was A Farewell to Kings, and that had a huge impression on me musically. And then I've been a fan of the band ever since. So, but I like all kinds of music. I'm influenced by lots of music. I mean, I can even listen to Grover Washington Jr., or I can basically listen to basically all kinds of music. Recently, I think actually in the year 2000, I kind of missed out. I kind of stopped listening to new music. The 90s, I was there for the Britpop movement. So bands like Oasis and Blur and Pulp and the Lightning Seeds were bands that I liked. New Order, of course. And then I kind of lost track a little bit, but I do remember that actually being inspired by Linkin Park. Their first two albums, I think, actually were not normally my type of music, I must say, but they were a band that were actually quite inspiring. And I'm not normally into this sort of like metal shouty kind of music, but that was, I think, one of the last bands I think that were probably, I can say, had an influence on me. So I've got quite a wide ranging I'll speak again, wide-ranging palette of musical tastes. But they're probably the bands that stick in the mind. If you put me in a corner and say, well, what are your 10 Desert Island discs? They're probably a combination of all the bands that I've actually mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many great bands out there, and you mentioned a lot of them. Those are great, great people. I mean, they're great bands. And um, well, people may want to learn more about you. I guess you're on streaming and social media, and you may even have an official website. Go and tell everybody about how they can contact you.
Yeah, sure. I've got my own website. It's thekindmachine.com. It's very easy to find. You can find me on Linktree as well. All my links actually are on Linktree. I think it's linktree.ee/ the kind machine, so that's pretty easy to find. And I'm on all social media. I'm trying to do my best on TikTok, although you can see that I'm not exactly of the younger generation, so I'm doing my best. So yeah, I'm basically on Facebook. Obviously, everyone's on Facebook these days, but yeah, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Spotify, Apple Music. Yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. You really have to be these days. I do have an aversion to social media, I must admit. Not for political reasons. I'm not going to die in a ditch because I think Spotify's business model is terrible, which it is. But unfortunately, you just have to bite the bullet. I mean, this is how people will get to hear my music. So I will make my music available on Spotify with gritted teeth and obviously a few swear words under my breath. But it's the game we all have to play. So you can find me absolutely everywhere. Snapchat is not something I'm involved with, but yeah. All the usual suspects, you can find me on social media. Probably the best place to go is, as I said, www.thekindmachine.com, and you'll find links to all my social media sites there.
Okay. We'll go there right now, thekindmachine.com, as you mentioned, and you can check out a lot of things about Tony there.
Yeah.
And I know you won't be disappointed. And this video we're about to see, it's called Hearts in Bloom. Tell us a little story about that. It's probably self-explanatory, but if there's a story about it, go ahead and let us know that.
Yeah, it was my debut single, and actually it's very, very important for me because the idea of Hearts in Bloom formulated the moment I thought I was going to do my solo project. So I just wanted to create something that was impactful and was a bit joyful, because the idea behind the Kind Machine is to basically try and bring a bit of joy into people's lives. I don't want the project to be sort of all kind of preachy and telling people, how bad the world is, and how terrible things are, and make any political kind of statement. Although it's not that I don't care about those things, I do. But the idea is to I think actually the problem with the world today is there's just too little empathy and understanding. People don't listen to each other anymore. And I just wanted to create something that was just upbeat and was, a little bit inspiring, a little bit joyful. So deliberately, I chose the 80s sort of pop, synth pop genre, made it nice and bouncy, and put some nice positive messaging in there. Everyone's fallen in love, right? So people can relate to that. And I just wanted it to be a joyful song. And I just managed to pull it off. I don't have a natural voice, so I had to work really, really hard at obviously trying to sing that. And I'm improving every day. And that was the story behind the song. Yeah, it's just a simple little song. But I wanted it to be upbeat and joyful, and I wanted it to sort of promote what I believe in, which is kindness, happiness, and empathy.
Okay. I love the song, and I know you guys out there are going to love it too, and we'll get to that in just a second. But Tony, thank you so much for being on the show today. We'd love to have you back again sometime if you have anything to plug for us.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say my next single's coming out on October the 24th, which is a Friday, and that song is called Believe. So it's my second song. I've just announced actually the release date today. So please do actually sign up to my social media websites and follow me, and and listen to my new single when it comes out.
Okay. Without further ado, here's the Kind Machine with Hearts in Bloom. It begins right now.
whispered to my heart, left it open and kind. In the garden of my soul, new colors burst forth. Love's a ray of bloom rising up from the north. My heart's in bloom, oh, it's breaking free, like a wildflower dancing in the breeze. Petals wide open for the world to see. With every beat I feel so complete. Tangled in thorns, thought I'd never get out, but your smile was the rain ending my drought. Shook off the dust, wiped the tears from my eyes. Now my heart's field is on the sunny skies. My heart's in bloom, oh, it's breaking free, like a wildflower dancing in the breeze. Petals wide open for the world to see. With every beat I feel so complete. No more shadows chasing after me. In your light I found where I should be. Roots deep in love's fertile ground. Every heartbeat makes a joyous sound. My heart's in bloom, oh, it's breaking free, like a wildflower dancing with the breeze. Petals wide open for the world to see. With every beat I feel so complete. I feel so complete. No more shadows chasing after me. In your light I found where I should be. Roots deep in love, fertile ground. Every heartbeat makes a joyous sound. My heart's in bloom, oh, it's breaking free, like a wildflower dancing with the breeze. Petals wide open for the world to see. With every beat I feel so complete. I feel so complete.